So we see this really beautiful couple of Ram and Sita. And then interestingly that there's so much controversial and so much anger that people have around Ram and Sita's relationship, where actually, if you see it in the spiritual context, it's probably the sweetest couple you have. So you have Radha and Krishna, which may be probably a lot more renowned to be romantic, but Radha spent a lot of her time pining, huh? And the actual stories between Radha and Krishna aren't that many. So, yes, there was him stealing the butter and the Rasriya. But also, this is also very interesting to understand, that Radha was married. And the age difference between them is humongous. So for a lot of it, she was looking after Krishna like a child, even though the relationship is one of a, what's that word they use? Forbidden love, anything. And then we see also Parvati ji and Shiv ji. Again, a lot of their story is, actual stories is Parvati ji doing tapas and purifying her mind. Even once they married, although you have to do this, there's this 25,000 years Shiv ji is in meditation, and then, she waits, and then 25,000 years he's with her, and it's called Leela. What are they doing? Well, very romantic that time. Lots of pleasure, lots of indulgence in that time. So she does have that. But there's a lot of tapasya charya that you see Parvati ji doing, especially in her 2 times. You see a lot of tapasya charya so that she can marry Shivji, and then second, she does a lot of tapasya charya to get half his body to become Ardhanarishwari. Now, there's loads and loads and loads of symbolism in all of those stories about the marriage between spirit and matter. And that's why you see the 25,000 years where nothing is happening, because it's just spirit and there's no matter. But if you bring matter into play, so this is like whole of creation theory. When there's no creation, then there's just spirit. And then creation comes into play and it manifests. And then spirit and matter are those playing, right? They've combined and they've created. And there's this Leela. And also with Ardhanarishwari, that Jiva merging into the Paramatma. And that sense of total balance between yin and yang, masculine and feminine. So lots and lots of symbolism in the stories of Parvati ji and Shiva. But here you see in the story of Ram and Sita ji. So firstly, they in movies it is called cute meet, right? Meet cute. Very, very sweet. You don't have it in anywhere else. Actually, there's no moment where, well, there is a moment where Parvati ji sees Shiva, but he's meditating. So it's not really quite a meet cute, because he's meditating, she sees him. And when he opens his eyes, he burns calm there. So even with Radha and Krishna, there's no moment. You don't get told the moment where they see each other. But you get told this moment where Sita ji and Ram meet each other. So it's like a proper romance story. There's the meeting, there's the wanting, there's the marriage, then there's the happily getting along, living with each other. Now, so like I said, there's many Ramayans and they all slightly different. And so we stopped at the garden, right? They're in the garden. Sita ji's gone off to the temple.
We went to the Swayambar.
We gone back to the garden. No, we in the garden. Please come be in the garden with me. We in the garden. So in this telling of the narration of the Ramayana in the garden, different in Tulsi Ramayana, poetry to the nth degree. Even in Kamba Ramayana, poetry to the nth degree, where Ramchandra ji is likening Sita ji to the full moon and how so bright and so beautiful and so resplendent. But the moon has marks and Sita ji is flawless. And the moon will wax, wane, but Sita Ji's beauty will never wail. So all this like so crazy poetic. Then who's he telling? He's telling all of this to Lakshmi. In Valmiki Ramayana also they notice each other, not much dialogue. But in folktale, there's this really sweet scene where Sita Ji goes up to him and actually says, "Who are you?" So it's not documented in Valmiki Ramayana, but it's a really nice, fun story, which I've included in the Valmiki lesson plan. If you're already a teacher, you've already read it. So he's dressed as a sannyasi, right? I mentioned this. He's with Vishwamitra, and so he's dressed as a sannyasi, as a student. With Vishwamitra. So he says, I'm the student of Vishwamitra, because in that, right then, at that capacity, he's a student of Vishwamitra. So when he introduces himself, he's a student of Vishwamitra. He doesn't say Dashaputra now, which usually is how he introduces himself. Every other place in the Ramayana, when he's asked, who are you? He says Dashaputra now. In fact, even when Hanumanji asked him, who are you? He says Dashaputra now. But here he says, student of Vishwamitra. I guess, they can't just come to the yajna just unannounced. So Vishwamitra brought him. So that's the relationship he's in at that moment of time. And then she says, but you look very royal. And then you're dressed like a sannyasi. Kind of like confused what this is all about. And she said, that's the same with Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was also a great king, but now he's one of the greatest yogis on this planet. And so then natural question, so why are you here? And so he said, Vishwamitra ji brought me for the Dhanush Yagna. And then she said, the Dhanush Yagna, Janak Maharaj has promised Sita ji in marriage to have her accept the Dhanush. And do you think it's fair that Sita ji should marry a yogi? Like, why are you taking part in the Dhanush Yagna? Will you marry Sita Ji if she's, and so at this point she hasn't said she's Sita Ji and he hasn't said he's Ram. And then Ramchandra Ji says, yes, whoever is offered with devotion and my guru blesses, I will marry. And then she's like, but do you think it's fair that Sita Ji should marry a yogi, like Sita Ji, who's a princess? And just, is it at this bit? No, not this bit. Wait, I missed one dialogue. And then so when she said that Dhanushya, the Sita Ji will be given to the person who lifts the bow, and he said, why is this bow so special? And so she replies, when Sita Ji was a young maiden, she lifted it. So he said, such an easy bow to lift? Should that really be a test to see how Sita Ji can lift her to get married? And then she said, no, even great kings and princes have not been able to pick up. In fact, they have broken their backs trying to pick up the bow. And then he smiles and he says, what great kings and princes can't do, a yogi can do very easily. Which is true, right? Like this is, and of course, she being the daughter of Janak Maharaj knows this, that yes, yogis can do much more than great kings and princes. So this is where she says, but do you think it's fair that Sita Ji should marry a yogi, she being a princess? And so he says, well, Sita Ji was born in a burrow in the land when Janak Maharaj was plowing. She definitely shouldn't marry a prince. But he knows that she's Sita. She doesn't yet know that he's Ram. I don't know how he knows, but it seems to be that he knows. And then, or even if he doesn't, he's playing it very cool. And when he says that, he said, then it would be a great honor for Sita to marry a yogi. And she says, I am none other than that Sita. And Ram says, but if you want to marry him, Ram, who has done, she acknowledges that a yogi who is in the service of this world, it would be a great honor to be able to marry someone who is in the service of people. So he says, but if you want to marry such a person, you too have to vow to remain ever in the service of people. And if you do, then Ram will accept you, who is no other than the one in front of you. And when she realizes Ram, it takes a minute for her to recognize, and then she runs away. So there's all these really cute stories about their relationship, like this dialogue that has, and in folklore, there's quite a few. Ayodhya side, UP side, where the story is a lot more prominent. But even if you see in the story of the Ramayana, in Valmiki's Ramayana, there's these bits where Ramchandraji is sitting and they're talking, and he's actually saying how he feels. In Tulsi Ramayana, you don't see this. He doesn't say what he's feeling. And like later on, when KK exiled, in front of Kaushalya Mata in Valmiki Ramayana, he remains totally equipoised. In front of Dashrath and KK, he remains totally equipoised. But when he goes back into the room to see Sita, it's kind of like it's the one place where he can just be himself. He doesn't have to be king of Ayodhya. Doesn't have to be perfect. And so many times in the Ramayana, you get this. Even when they are in the forest in those years of exile, the kind of conversations they have, they're so open in the way that they talk to each other. Like there's definitely a great sense of friendship also. And again, that time in exile, there's a lot of romance. There's a lot of them spending walks and, just being in each other's company and caring for each other, lots of caring for each other. So depending on which one you see, but their romance, I think, lasts the longest. Because it was a few years before they get sent into exile. They had that whole 13 years while they were in exile. They have almost a year or so after the exile as well. Okay, so where were we? He picked up the bow already? He broke the bow already. The thunder happened, and then I spoke about that. So now coming back here. So in Valmiki Ramayana, there's no Swayamvar, there's no other kings. Janak Maharaj just tells him, if you can pick up the bow, then you meet the criteria. And he does. So it's not like so many kings come. So, pretty much every other Ramayana, it's a Swayamvar. In Valmiki proper, there's a gathering. There's lots of people there, and he himself goes on Janak Maharaj's command, picks up the bow. And then once the bow is picked up, then message is sent to Ayodhya that Ram has picked up the bow and he can marry Sita. And so much festivity, so much excitement. And the pretty much half of Ayodhya come for this wedding because they're so excited to have Ram's wedding. And then there's this discussion between Dashrath Maharaj and Janak Maharaj because Sita has a sister, Urmila, and then Lakshman is always with Ramchandraji. So they decide, might as well just get Urmila married to Lakshman as well. This is, you see kind of like, what's the word? What's the word? Like, yeah, no, like 2-in-1, 3 package deal, like making efficiency of behavior kind of thing. Like, I don't think families usually do this, right? Well, I definitely don't think royal families do this. Usually royal families will keep alliances with many, many different kingdoms. But yeah, if you remember in the beginning, I said all 4 of them were Amshas of that Amrit, and so they all considered an avatar at the same time. So I guess Janak Maharaj's family. But Sita's Lakshmi, none of the others are. Only Sita's Lakshmi. So I'm not sure why this. When Janak Maharaj has a brother, his brother has two daughters. So, which is Madhavi, who gets married to Bharat, and Shwetakirti, who gets married to Shatrughan. And so all four weddings happen at the same time. So this again too, usually there would be so much emphasis on the crowned king's wedding versus everyone else's wedding. But here it's just like everyone, almost like package deal, mass productions. But lots and lots of festivity. Lots and lots of festivity when the wedding happens. And in Tulsi Ramayana, emphasis is given on when Janak Maharaja places Sita Ji's hand in Ramchandra Ji's hand. This is the bit that usually explains Kanyadan. And so when the father puts the daughter's hand into the to-be husband or now husband's hand, it's the giving away, which makes the marriage Kanyadan. Dan meaning offering. Here you wouldn't translate it as charity. It would be an offering. And so the idea of Kanyadan is in a patriarchal society, the sons take over the family business. Not all of India was a patriarchal society. Kerala was a matriarchal society, although it doesn't really work so. It used to be the women. So men were born into the women's family. Women had ownership of all the land resources. And nice to know that India had a whole state where it was a matriarchal society. That's why when we have now, where we have the Chinmaya International Foundation, it's where Adi Shankaracharya was born. It's his mother's house. So property belonging to his mother's lineage. In a patriarchal society, the son takes over and the daughter joins the family of the husband. And so it's a giving away. And this child now is going to serve and help the prospering of that family. And it's true. Right? Whichever person comes into the family, whether it's through marriage or whether it's through a child coming into the marriage, the minute there's another person, dynamics change of the family. The synergy of the group changes with each additional person that gets added, especially if you think about it in terms of staying in the same house. Right? So if you're all staying in the same house, so that another person staying there, the dynamics does change. And their personality type, their sense of value will definitely contribute to the overall feeling of that household. And, here in Hong Kong, we can even see it with, I live alone. Of course, all of you all come and go. And so I never quite feel like I live alone. But the maid that's working here definitely affects the overall personality of the environment. So we've had one that's very chirpy, gets very excited. Any one of you walk in, and it's nice when they are happy and they welcoming and then after that we had very affectionate but timid. She would hide from all of y'all. Like if y'all ate my food, she'd get very upset. She'd come and ask me if y'all had enough food, and I'd be like, yeah, I gave it to them. But why are they eating your food? It was very cute how protective she was of me, even though it was like none of y'all would ever hurt me or take anything that was mine. But the environment became very nurturing. Whereas previous to her, the one who was here was Pari. And then some are, they just do their job. Right? There's not much interaction. And it makes a difference to the feeling. The personality of each person that's added in makes a difference to the feeling of the general room and family overall. So a girl coming into the family will change the dynamics of that family. And so the idea was parents brought up their children, both boy and girl, to be full of virtues, full of values, full of intelligence. And then the girl went to benefit another family. And somebody came to your house also. So it's like I nurtured, I invested in, and I gave so much of myself, because parents do, right? They give so much of themselves to each kid. But I don't benefit from whatever I gave to this kid. Somebody else will benefit from everything I gave to this kid. And that's why it's considered the biggest dharma. Because usually when we give, there's something we get back. Even when you love a kid, of course, you get back all that you love, you get back. But the idea is I won't continue to benefit from everything that I have given. Whereas the son you expect them to look after you. In a patriarchal society, which I don't know works anymore or not. Some ways that doesn't really, right? Like now it's not patriarchal, it's not matriarchal. But that was the essence of giving all of yourself and the very best of yourself to make this person the best that this person could be without wanting anything back from this person. So it's charity in its purest form. It's just a pure giving without taking, which is why people will go as far as to say they won't even drink a cup of water in the girl's house because you're not supposed to take anything back. But no need to be so literal and extreme about this. Drink the water, it's fine. But the attitude is when we give without wanting back. And Kanyadan is supposed to be the king, queen of all gods. It's the best one we can give. And that's usually what Janak Maharaj, when he puts Sita Ji's hand in Ramchandraji's hand, that's what he's saying. That I am giving you Vedehi, I think is the name of Sita Ji that he uses. And she will be your Sahadharmacharini. This is very famous. This is what gets quoted in lots of weddings. And so who is the wife? Sahadharmacharini. Saha means your partner in. Saha means together with. So she is your equal in doing dharma. So the idea being that we've taught her all the virtues, all the values, all the philosophy, and so she's fully equipped to lead this life of dharma. And so this is said in the wedding ceremonies, but it's also a way to teach parents how to bring up children. Now, it's not just saying it for women. Saha means together with you. So the son also has to be brought up to live life of dharma. And so, dharma is so many different things. But it's work, duties, responsibilities. And so to share that responsibility, anything shared is always lighter. Anything shared is always more fun. And a good example of this is food. Although some people will disagree. Don't share my food, I want it all to myself. But actually shared foods taste better. It's always more fun. So Sometimes you'll see these people sharing earplugs, listening to a song. So cute, right? Even on the flight, watching the same movie together. Because why? I mean, I can sit and watch mine, you can sit and together. The feeling of together is very comforting, warm. And so brahmacharya is the first stage of life, where we pretty much studying, and we've got lots of friends while we're studying. And then responsibility starts. After we've studied, now life starts. Adulting is this wonderful word. And it's why is adulting a word? Because we don't know how to do it. So it had to become a word. Otherwise, it wasn't there before, right? The word adulting didn't exist before until people weren't being adults. And so now we had to introduce this word. Why? Because, you know, as a kid, you're so free and you don't have to do anything. And now you have to be responsible. And it is a bit daunting. And so it's so nice to have someone to share that with. I'm going to be responsible, but now I have you to be my partner to help me be responsible, and I'll help you to be responsible. And that's really this marriage ceremony. It's a consensus that we support each other in doing dharma. Because actually it's so easy, isn't it? So easy to get distracted and not do that. Or sometimes it's so overwhelming. And even though I want to, I don't know where to start. So if I get distracted and if somebody else is there, they can, and I'll be like, oh yeah. Or, you know, stipulated period of, we can take a break, but it's only 20 minutes, okay? I go, okay, only 20 minutes, then we'll come back to doing what we're supposed to be doing. Or if it's just so overwhelming, and then somebody to share the responsibility with, we divide the work. I'll do this bit, you do, and then it gets done. And when we divide it, it will get done. So the idea of partnership in doing dharma is a support network for both the people involved. And so vision of marriage is to bring out the best in each other. And that's why today when we're choosing, it's so important who we choose. But those days, you didn't choose. It was chosen. And so now you make the most. This is why you have this. So you support each other and bring out the best in each other. So they find a way to support each other and bring out the best in each other. Today, when we have so much more freedom and now choose, people have become very overwhelmed with having to make that choice. They actually find it too much of a burden to even choose. Because what if I get it wrong? Chances are, because who's perfect? Like, just nobody's perfect. So whoever you choose is going to have good bits and not so good bits. But the vision that we go in there with is supposed to be bringing out their best and creating a relationship where they bring out our best. And sometimes we can see it and we can understand it and we can choose accordingly. Sometimes we can't see it. And that's why we get the blessings of parents. Because when we can't see, although I'm not saying parents are perfect, but they usually know their child fairly well, and they can usually tell if the other person's bringing out the best in this child or not. And so they need not, I know in today's world, they're not making the decision, but always good to get their blessings. Because where I can't see as clearly, they can see a bit more clearly. If they're not overly attached, then they can see clearly. If they're overly attached, even they can't see clearly. So ask someone who is detached for their opinion in whether the relationship is really the best. So Janak Maharaj's one act of taking the hand and putting it into Ramchandraji's hand is like this union. Even though traditionally it's seen as the father giving away, both in Eastern culture and in Western culture, right? It's seen as the father giving away. It's more of a ceremony of a new beginning, more than the emphasis of a giving away. Whereas my support was previously my parents, my support now is this person who is my partner. And so also the Grahastha life, when it starts, Grahastha life is very much about fulfilling duty, but we have so many desires. If we didn't have so many desires, we'd bypass Grahastha and go to sannyas. So if we haven't bypassed Grahastha, means we have so many desires. And so Grahastha allows, okay, you can fulfill your desires within dharma. So do dharma, then usually we have lots of extra time. And then in all the extra time, you fulfill all desires, also within the confines of dharma. So in a marriage, a lot of the partnership desires get already taken care of. But even other things like let's say somebody who's really into music, but they end up being a doctor or something, and so but they really still want to pursue music. And so then, while dharma also to look after kids, look after parents, do this, do that, but I still want to do my music, at least somebody's there. They will look after kids. That's it. I go off and do my music. So having this person there enables me to be able to fulfill all desires without neglecting. And so this is marriage ceremony, beginning of a life of responsibility. Also, you are now mature enough to be able to fulfill your desires in an intelligent, healthy way. So if you see kids, right? And if you leave kids at a party, they're going to overdo the sugar and then run around like crazy kids on a sugar high, and then they're going to crash. Whereas adulting is, you eat just a little bit. Nobody's saying don't eat, but don't overdo it so that it hurts you. So this point of marriage is also supposed to be, like I said, it doesn't necessarily apply anymore because people are marrying later and but this was the point. Brahmacharya finished, Grihastha started, and that was the point where you are now intelligent enough to find healthy ways to fulfill your desires, which is part of dharma. Because otherwise we're so preoccupied with the desire that the mind doesn't have attention span or capacity to focus on things. I'm sure you've noticed this. And the best example is when you get obsessed with having the coffee. Right? So you're working, and then coffee. Now you can't work anymore. You have to get up, go get that coffee, and come back. Then only you can work. Now, this is such a small, simple, basic example. But desires do this. Sometimes desires just become so big in our head that they prevent us from doing anything else. I remember when I started the spiritual journey, you get exposed to so many different ashrams, so many different teachers. And at that point, Sai Baba and people would tell all these stories about him manifesting vibhuti or manifesting this, or allowing people to get things that they wanted, whether it be a house or a marriage or a baby or whatever. And I don't remember exactly because I didn't really get into it. But sometimes he'd touch something and then that person would get whatever they wanted. And the natural question was, why? Why is he just giving everyone what they want? Around the same time too, I had started the study of the Gita, and then there was so much like detach. And so like all I heard from Gurudev was detach. And then Sai Baba handing out Rolex watches, handing out. It's like, what's going on here? I remember one of the devotees said that he explains it that until that desire is fulfilled, the person's not going to get beyond the desire. So fulfill the desire so that they can get beyond the desire. To some extent, it works. It doesn't always work. And I'm sure him in his wisdom would have known when to give what to who. But sometimes when we get what we want, we just become greedy. Which is why sometimes it's not so easy to get all the things we want. Because when you just get it, you become greedy. But if you work for it and you get it, there's kind of gratitude for it, there's satisfaction to it. But the point does remain that sometimes it's an obsession and I can't get beyond it till I get it. Yeah. Before I joined the Brahmachari course, I had gone to India earlier and I was staying with a family for 2 months. A very, very cheeky young girl who was very close to Puja Gurudev was sharing a room with me. I remember she was desperately in love. Desperately in love. Here's me joining the ashram looking at her like but what was hilarious is she would look at me like joining the ashram. Like, you foolish girl, why are you joining the ashram? And don't think you're gonna get anywhere. I remember that line so clearly. And then she looked at me one day and she said, you think you're so amazing wanting to get moksha, but I'll have you know, as much as you want to get moksha, I want to get this guy to marry me. I'm thinking that's really nothing to be proud of. But her argument was that her desire was so absolute. It was a very difficult marriage for everyone to agree with. To her credit, she moved mountains, dried up oceans, and made it happen. And then, well, now she wants moksha. Sometimes you do have to just get that one thing and get that hurt by the one thing you wanted so you can want moksha. So, Sahadharmacharini, we are partners in dharma. And even though all these desires will get fulfilled, the aim is still, when we say bring out the best in each other, the aim is still moksha. Because what's the best we can do? Right? From a transactional point of view, bring out the best in each other will be make sure we're happy in each other's company, make sure we're more loving, make sure we feel so safe and secure that we're more forgiving, we're more charitable, we're more accepting. That's bringing out the best in each other in terms of creating values. When we are secure with another person, we do tend to be more strong and courageous. Yeah. When we feel we've got no one supporting us, it's harder to be strong and courageous. So yes, having this person there helps us to live up to our values and be the best we can. But also, the more we have these values, the cleaner our hearts and minds get, the more we are building up the adhikari, the qualifications that we need to be able to attain moksha. And so many often, I'll tell everyone, get married. And then some of them will be cheeky and say, you didn't get married, why are you making us get married? Well, because you want to, firstly. And then secondly, because you don't want moksha enough yet, so get married. Best way for you to want moksha. But there's so much benefit in learning all these adjustments and seeing our mind clearly. Our mind plays so many tricks with us. When there's another person there, we can see so clearly what tricks the mind is playing. When we're being selfish, when we're being calculating, when we're being petty, when we're being, dominating, when we're being all the emotions, respectful, not respectful. When we're being stubborn, my new favorite is emotion. No. Why? Just no. But I'm not stubborn. I'll usually do whatever needs to be done. But it's interesting to watch our own mind. Of course, we can do it in all relationships. But in a spouse relationship, there is a bit more investment because it is seen as a partnership. And all the more when there's that sense of commit. So Sita ji and Ramchandra ji getting married. This section of the Ramayana, very often to explain the importance of marriage, the need for it, and purpose of marriage. Dashrath Maharaj's words are very often quoted. And leading up to this point where Dashrath Maharaj puts his hand, even Sita ji's prayer before she actually gets married to Ramchandra ji is the part of the Ramayana that is often sang by young girls. So this section of the Ramayana is very much everyday household useful. This is why Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavatam get taught. Because yes, in the Gita, there was this incident where, I think I've told you all this before, when I got to Hong Kong I think I was in Hong Kong for like 2 months. I wasn't here for very long. Very, very new brahmacharini, straight out of Sandeepani Sadhanalaya, got thrown here in Hong Kong. And one of our trustees who very well-known within the mission, well-known within Hong Kong, there was a wedding in her family and they wanted a quote on married. So she rang me and she said, my name at that point in time, can you give me a quote on marriage from the Gita? And my mind was blank. And I said, I'll get back to you. And I hung up. And she said it like, of course you should know this. And I'm thinking to myself, I should know this. And I literally have come out of Pabai Ashram 2 years studying Vedanta. And then everybody here expects me to know it. What was I doing for those 2 years? I have never read the Gita so honestly in my life. I hung up with her and that night opened from chapter 1, verse 1 and read every single one of the 700 verses of the Gita to find a quote on marriage in the Gita. And after my undivided, single-pointed attention, there isn't any. This is why when she said, just give me a quote on the marriage from the Gita, my mind was blank because there isn't any. And I thought, no, I wasn't paying attention. I would have missed that. There must be something in there. There's 700 verses, for goodness sake. There must be something on marriage. All these people think they want something on marriage from the Gita. Okay, breathe. In those days, when did I come? 2000. The mobile phones weren't so common. We didn't have WhatsApp. You had to call overseas, trunka. There's a heart in my mouth to call Swamiji. Because I can't look bad, right? Like I'm representing Gurudev here. This is a trustee asking for this, and this is So even if they think I'm horrendous, they shouldn't think mission is producing horrendous brahmacharis and then sending them to Hong Kong, and then they'll ship me off again. I'm exaggerating, but my heart was in my mouth. And then finally, so when Swamiji did pick up, I was like, maybe I should already know this, but is there something in the Gita about marriage? Swamiji was like, no. It's about how to train your mind. There's no details about marriage in the Gita. And then Swamiji was like, he's on the battlefield. Why would they talk about marriage? I'm like, this is what I should have said when she said. I'm going to call her right back. It won't have the same impact. But in the Ramayana, you have Sita. You have Janak Maharaj, you have her mother, you have her sister. You see the Bharat coming with all gusto from Ayodhya. You see this marriage happening. You see Janak Maharaj and Sita ji's mother's name. I forgot it. They crying because they don't want her to go. Janak Maharaj saying this house will be empty now. But he only agreed to give all 4 daughters away at one time. Obviously, the house is going to be empty. Maybe that's also you should learn. Don't give them all away on the same day. But even this pride that both her mother and father have, that is what he says is, and there's like no doubt, she will be an asset to your family. She will only bring prosperity and sweetness and auspiciousness. Because that's just who she is. For the parent to see that, right? To see it's such human, it's such everyday emotions. And that's why Ramayana is enjoyed. Because it's so relatable, it's so everyday. It's about transactional living. Even Ramchandraji and Sita ji meeting in the garden beforehand, it's all very... Nothing like that happens in the Gita. Just detach. You are not the body. And we need that knowledge for sure. But this is everyday stuff. So when I do have desires and I am living in the world, this is the vision. It's not meant to bind you and make you suffer. It's meant to be a support network. And I think that understanding has gone to a great extent. It's also not to indulge you and pamper you. It's to iron out the creases, or to, sandpaper away your rough edges. I think so often now that I'm older myself, and I see my parents' generation, and not just my parents, so many here in Hong Kong, and my extended family. I've traveled, I'm so privileged, different countries where I've met so many different people. With time, we soften, or we sweeten, or with time, we become more cranky. Like there's 2 very distinct ways in which people get old. More stubborn, more cranky, or they soften and they sweeten. When we've lived the right way, when we've allowed our relationships to polish, rub. A little bit friction is always needed, right, to clean. And then when we want to make things shine, a little bit friction always needed. So when we allow the relationships to do that, then the way we grow is we sweeten. And so it's also interesting. I'll watch other people. And it's interesting also that when I get asked a question, other people in the room feel they have a right to answer. Happens all the time. Huh? So somebody will ask me, what do you think I should do? Da, 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 da. And elderly people who are around me, they happily answer. And some go into full-on lecture mode. You should do like this and you should do like this. You young people today, you don't understand it. Da, 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 da. And some people will answer, but it will be half joke, half a snippet of advice, very playfully delivered, and so much more palatable. And so when we live life the right way, even the way we look at things is more digestible when we interacting with each other. And when we don't allow our relationships to create that kind of a cleansing in us, then we become a little bit rigid. So instead of our perspective widening, can actually narrow. So, purpose of marriage is to allow this person to shine. And maybe they're doing it consciously or not consciously, but it's me seeing myself clearly and then me doing the shining. They're not doing it. They can never do it. No one else can ever bring about a change in our heart. It's me bringing about the change in my heart. Well, and I won't change it unless I see it. So this marriage is very significant because it's such a huge part of most people's lives. Marriage is a huge part of a lot of people's lives. So Sita and Ram have this. It's described in the scriptures as perfect. Other people may not see it as perfect, but scriptures describe Ram and Sita's marriage as perfect. Perfect, why? Because they are truly partners. They're well matched. And then secondly, they support each other in dharma. And thirdly, they bring out the best in each other. You'll see throughout the story of the Ramayana, they bring out the best in each other. So all of them got married. So Sita, Ram, Parvishi, Lakshman, Madhavi, Bharat, and Shwetaketi and Shatrughan. All of them got married. And when all the festivities were over, it was time to go back to Ayodhya. And so that's not called Bharat. That's called what? Vidai. Isn't Vidai just the crying bit? So the procession is called what? Doli. It is called something. I forget the name. But Doli must be Hindi. I will know the Guju name. Because I remember growing up, we'd go in one big Bharat to the wedding and then bring her back. That many number cars had to come back also. When we lived in South Africa, we drive. If the girl was from Joburg and from Durban, we'd all drive. It was lots of fun. Because it would be like some 20, 25 cars driving up and the kids are all over in everyone's different cars. Lots of fun. Weddings are lots of fun. Kids get away with murder because the parents are too busy doing everything else. So needed, right? You need all these events for that outlet, for that bonding. A lot of bonding happens in wedding time. A lot of togetherness celebration. And sense of community also gets created. Okay, so they go back. All of them go back now to Ayodhya. And Ramchandraji and Sitaji have their own palace. And they are living very, 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 very comfortably, very, very, very happy. Ramchandraji is still a prince. All of them are still princes for quite a while. Yeah? There's this fictional stories, a lot of fictional stories that get written about the Ramayana. So many actually. And now the most recent one is this. Amish has written stories on the Ramayana, which is not Ramayana at all. He's just taken characters and made up stories about them. Only we'll allow such things in Hinduism. But at least he didn't mess with the story of the Ramayana. He's made up so many stories on Sita, but I haven't read them, so I cannot comment on that. But there's been a lot of others that have rewritten the Ramayana from a story point of view, like either a highly romantic Mills and Boons point of view or a highly Harry Potter, like there's all these magical happenings, things. And any renditioning of the Ramayana is a good renditioning as long as it helps invoke devotion in our heart for Ram. So if it's a Harry Potter version and they've used magic to explain Marich becoming the golden deer, because I've read that one, it's quite fascinating. And, Jatayu being able to talk and all of this kind of thing. So I've read a few of them. And this is a fictional incident. It's not in any proper Ramayana. But it really struck me. So in this Ramayana, KK is the favorite queen. Actually, that's true in every Ramayana. KK is the favorite queen. It's not good to have favorites. It's very painful for everybody who's not the favorite. So Kaushalya and Sumitra are not the favorite queens. So when Sitaji, Urmila, and Madhavi, Shwetaketi come to the palace, then the mother-in-law presents a gift, apparently, in this culture. A lot of traditions, they would, like a welcome to the house. Although I have heard in some houses, the mother-in-law goes to the trousseau and takes something. Yeah, different traditions. I see benefit in both. Having something taken from you is very good. You're laughing. No, it's very good. You're part of this family now, share. Compulsory. Of course, the way in which it's done. It's nicer to be welcomed with warmth and love. So, fictional story. KK presents, of course, the best gift because she has access to the most of the fortune. And Kaushalya's one is more traditional, more like a family heirloom kind of a gift. And Sitaji takes Kaushalya's gift in this fictional story. But what I thought was interesting is how the writer was trying to depict her sense of dharma or her sense of compassion. Because if you look at it from a very politics in terms of people playing people, you'd want to win the favor of the person that has the most power. Right? In terms of social dynamics, you've come new into this place. She has maximum power. So kowtow to her, make her feel good, and then be in her good books is the easier thing to do. Some people might say it's even the smart thing to do. But to take the gift that comes from Kaushalya shows loyalty, but it also shows compassion. That you're not less. She might be favored, but nobody's less. Is how I read that whole scene in this fictional version of the Ramayana. And then it got me thinking on how would we depict Sita's ability to live dharma in different scenarios. I thought it was quite a good attempt to show that this is something she would do. She would stand by Kaushalya Mata, and of course that's going to annoy Kate. And so in this version of the story, it's like, he gets happy to send her off to the forest because she was, cheeky. And that's what happens sometimes when we don't kowtow, right? We have to face a little bit of. And so given the choice, most people will kowtow to play it safe. But playing it safe is not following dharma. And so again and again and again and again, we will see in the story of the Ramayana, following dharma is having a lot of strength. And going back to this example, as a young bride, you'd want the prettiest, latest fashion. You just would. And so not to opt for that, that's why I said it's maturity. It's now learning to fulfill desires is in an intelligent, healthy way. Because desire is I want, she's giving. Where's the harm? But maturity is I'll be hurting Koshi. I'll be rubbing it in her face, that KK's the favored one. She doesn't need me to rub it in her face. So now they're back in Ayodhya. And now Ramayana starts. When people say, oh God, he told me one full Ramayana. This bit, not the earlier bit. The earlier bit is not the whole, what people do this with. Okay, I'll pause. Any questions? Yeah,
It's not always easy to know what is the right thing to do.
never is.
Then how?
What is dharma? That's why the story of the Ramayana is beautiful, because in this context, you see what's dharma. In that context, you see what's dharma. So if you ask me what's dharma, like, that's too big a question. But to answer, because I am obliged to answer, that which is for the greater good. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaśyid dukkham bhaveet, asatam ma samgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityunamaya Om Purnamaya Purnamidam Purnam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Hare